Hi, I'm Jeff Johnston, host of the Living Undeterred podcast. And today, another special guest, an individual I just met recently and had an opportunity to have some very good conversations, and wanted to bring him on the show and share a little bit about what he's doing for mental wellness and a little bit about his story. That's the beauty of being on a podcast, or actually being a guest on a podcast, is just to sit back and listen to people share personal stories. It's like I think community and connection are the two things that are really going to get us out of this the struggle, this epidemic we're in with mental wellness right now. But anyway, we'll get to that later, Mark. Nice. Thank you. Good for coming back coming onto the show. I really appreciate seeing you again, man.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I felt very blessed since the first time you and I spoke on the phone. So thank you for having me as a guest.
Yeah, it's crazy how many people I've met on this journey that I got thrust into 9 years ago. It's absolutely, it's quite stunning to think of the caliber of people I'm meeting, and people like you that are passionate about helping other people. And that's the great thing about being an advocate in the mental health space, is everyone I meet, they're more about giving than taking. They're more about increasing human flourishing than trying to benefit personally from. So maybe before we get too deep into the weeds with mental health and all that, why don't you share who you are, where you're from, a little bit of what you do. Your work in the legal profession, I think, is an important area to talk about what you do in that regard, but fire away.
Yes, I'm originally from the United Kingdom. Came here in December of 1987, right before my 21st birthday. My parents had bought a home here. In the early 80s, we had a condo down in Broward in Fort Lauderdale. And my father was a big believer in the American dream. I mean, my dad left school at 14, my mother 16. So it was a really big deal when I decided to go to law school. I mean, we'd never had that in the family. I mean, nobody ever finished high school, forget going to law school. And my dad was an entrepreneur. He built businesses. And my mom ran the home. And, my dad's father was a tailor. My mother's father was a barber. So somewhat humble beginnings. And my dad, built businesses. Some of them were successful and made a lot of money. And towards the end of his life, some of them were disasters and, took almost everything from him. So, I watched, I learned a lot from my dad. And unfortunately, I didn't realize until he was gone how much I'd learned from him. So, ended up going to law school. I did my undergrad at University of Michigan. I went to law school at Nova Southeastern. After I got divorced in 2004, I spent a year in DC, went back to school, got a master's in law, and worked on a presidential campaign. But my first job out of law school was I was an assistant state attorney here in Palm Beach County. So I had interned with them in 1993 and realized that my true passion was being in the courtroom. I would say I was in the top half of my law school class, which means I was just a little bit above the bottom half. And I think probably because I wasn't real passionate about the law, I didn't understand. I was like, okay, what's the big deal about this constitutional challenge? Like, what's the point here? What's the point of this rule of evidence? Like, I wasn't one of these guys that was rushing into class early so I could go to the library and read the 3 latest cases that had just come out of the Supreme Court. Frankly, I found that rather boring, and I thought the guys that did it were geeks anyway. I'd rather just, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to go work out, then I'm going to go to class, right? And somewhere in between all that, I'll squeeze in a protein shake. So, but when I interned with the state, and I interned with the state in 93, I did so because I figured, before I graduate law school, I should get some real trial experience. Well, my first direct examination of my first real trial, because as a certified intern, I could do everything the lawyers could do, including try cases. I said, this is it. This is where I'm supposed to be. If I'm here, I'm on a level playing field with everybody. There's nobody I couldn't beat. And I did a dozen jury trials as a second-year law student, which had never been done before. I was a real machine in the courtroom, and they ended up hiring me out of law school. And I was there for 5 years, and in 5 years, I tried 200 jury trials. 150 of them were misdemeanors, and 50 of them were felonies. I was trying murder cases as a county court prosecutor. Again, something that had never been done before. I mean, there was a case that needed to be tried. I'm trying it. But after 5 years of that kind of pace, because if you're in trial, it means you're working nights and weekends, I was just about fried. I was exhausted.
I bet.
But I realized a couple of things when I was there. First of all, we started to see the same faces over and over again. And when you're a young prosecutor, you're really gung-ho, right? Let's lock them all up. They're all bad. Well, it turns out they're not all bad, especially people with behavioral health issues. Those are people who've just been unable to make, sometimes make what we would consider objectively rational decisions. Well, these days we have, at least here in Florida, we have what we call diversionary courts, drug court, mental health court, veterans courts.
Yes.
The idea being people that fit within certain criteria can go through this sort of treatment program as part of the criminal justice system. They successfully complete, and the reward is the case gets dropped, right? Well, back in the 90s, we didn't have those. And even today, the mandate in Florida's criminal justice system is to punish first and rehabilitate second. Well, if that was the mandate back in the 90s and you had no diversionary courts, well, eventually people kept coming back over and over again. We just locked them up for as long as we could. What else could we do? You had probation, you had house arrest. Well, the next step is sending you either to the county jail or the state penitentiary. So, I realized that there was something wrong. And then I left in 99 after I was really bummed out. I did some divorce work. I got divorced. I got married and divorced. I did some defense work. And I will tell you, I made a lot more money. The first 2 years at law school when I was prosecutor, I lived at home with my parents. But I did defense work. I made a lot more money, and I was pretty good at it too. And I was completely and utterly miserable. I hated it. And it's not because I didn't find it intellectually stimulating. It's just that when you're a prosecutor, at least for when I was a prosecutor, I always felt really good about what I was doing. So I always tried to do the right thing. If I had somebody that was innocent or I thought they might be innocent, I didn't prosecute the case. When I was in intake, which is the part of the state attorney's office that reviews the cases for filing, if we didn't have enough evidence after the cops presented us the case, I wouldn't file it, much just to the chagrin of some of my office. But, I'm guided by rules of ethics and rules of evidence, procedure and substantive law. And if you bring me a case that I can't prove, well, either go get me some more evidence or I'm dumping it, because I'm not going to waste the taxpayers' money filing a case that's probably going to get dismissed at some point. So, I got a lot of different experience when I was in the office. But when I was prosecuting serious felonies, first and second degree felonies, where I either had the victim of a violent crime or I had the family of a decedent, well, I couldn't sort of unring the proverbial bell. What I could do was I could get them some justice, get them some closure, punish the person who committed this heinous act. And I took that responsibility really, really seriously and had great success putting the wrong people, putting the bad guys and bad girls in, locking them up, right? And I for me, that was such a it filled me with, pride and passion for being a lawyer, right? And I sort of lost that as a defense lawyer. Not that I'm poo-pooing doing defense work. It just didn't give me the same feeling. So I got married at 34. I was divorced at 35. And I spent a long time trying to figure my life out, to try and, get some passion back. I mean, I had all the material things a guy could ever want. I was comfortably well off. When I look back now and say, I just didn't realize how good I had it. I'm better now, but, what it took the universe taking everything from me. So I told you, before I went to DC, go back to school, I worked on a presidential campaign. The candidate I worked for lost. So no job working in the White House for Mark or anywhere else in the government, right? If you work for the wrong candidate, you are not getting a job. So back in 2011, I went to California for 3 years. I took what I had left after the 08 crash and spent 3 years out there tripping the light fantastic, looking for God. I don't know what I was looking for. Well, I know what I was looking for, and I found that, but that wasn't giving me satisfaction. Again, it was always about the shiny object or the beautiful girl or whatever it was.
Short-term happiness.
That gave me a little bit of a rush, right?
Yeah.
And while I was out there, I took the California bar exam twice, and I failed it twice, which was a bit of a kick in the ego because I studied for the Florida bar for 3 weeks, crammed for 10 days, and passed it. And I took the California bar and couldn't pass it. So after 3 years there, I ran out of money, so I had to come home. I thought I would take one more crack at it. So the third time I studied for it, I actually studied out. There was a local library here in Boca. So I sat down there, studied my off. At the same time, I was dating somebody that was just I'd known this girl for 25 years. I'd always want to date her. And these days she'd probably be a client or a patient. But again, she stimulated the I don't know, the immature Mark back then, the unfulfilled Mark. She gave me the rush that I needed. In any event, I studied for the bar exam, flew back to California, took it, came home, got within a percentage point and failed it again. And a lot of friends and family were telling me, maybe you're not supposed to be in California, you're supposed to be in Florida. And then I met somebody that completely changed the direction of my life. So, I was back in Florida. I had nothing going on. I was pretty much tapped out, no money, nothing really going on. Here I was 47 years old. I had nothing to financially show for my life. I had nothing on a personal level. I was going from, one day to the next, just about enough money to pay for the day. And, out of the blue, I decided to call a friend of mine that I went to law school with, see what he was doing, see if his life sucked as much as mine. His didn't, but it was a close call. And he said to me, he said, Mark, have you heard there's this breakfast meeting you should go to? There's a guy there who's speaking about being an entrepreneurial lawyer. I said, who is it? He said, have you ever heard of R. John Robbins? I said, never heard of him. Who is he? Well, he owns this company and it teaches lawyers the business side of practicing law, which is not something they teach in law school. And I said, well, when is it? He said, well, it's next Tuesday, 7:30 in the morning in the Gables. I'm like, I live in Boca. I'd have to get up at 4 a.m. to have any chance of getting down there in time. Forget it. I'm not going down there to hear some guy I never heard of. Anyway, a couple of days go by and I had this nagging feeling in my stomach. I just had this feeling I needed to go. I don't know why. I just did. Yeah. And I said, you know what? I'm going. And I did. I got up. I got my ass up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I got down there. And I watched R. John Robbins speak to a group of about 20 or 25 lawyers about the business side of running a law firm and being a lawyer, which is not something they teach any law student at any law school anywhere in the country.
I imagine. Yeah, I imagine.
And that really resonated with me because I had a dad who was an entrepreneur. And these lawyers, they all challenged him and they were, typical lawyers. They know best, even about, they know it all. Even the stuff they didn't know, they know, right? That's why they're all broke. And I saw him speak for about an hour and a half. And when he got done, I begged him for a job. He interviewed me and he ended up hiring me. So I spent a year living, my brother had a condo down in Miami. I spent a year living on a cot in the kids' room. And I worked for this guy and I watched him, I watched how he built his business. I watched him, at that time they had about 150 or 200 members. These days they have about 600 members. But I watched all these other law firms growing their businesses. And I learned about sales and I learned about marketing and team and production and the factory and all of that stuff. And I just think, I just soaked as much of it as I could in. And after a year there, I said, okay, it's time. I'm going to go open up my own law firm. And when I sat down and thought about who I wanted to help, I said, I've got close family members. I got friends who have these issues and there's nobody out there helping them. Now, at the time, there was a couple other lawyers there was 2 lawyers who were dabbling in it. And one was south of me and one was north of me. And the guy north didn't go south and the guy south didn't go north because we're making too much money off of this shit. Don't tell anybody about it.
Right. Why would they?
Why would they? Had a monopoly on it. So one of the things I learned from R. John watching him grow the business was making videos, right? He'd say, grab your phone, we're making a video. And he'd blast it out on social media. Back then we didn't have all the platforms we have now, but we had YouTube. And he used it to grow the business. So I started making all these videos. I was able to ironically, I started the law firm out of the same library that I'd studied for the California bar. The third time, that's where I started the law firm because I had no money.
Interesting.
And I started making videos on my phone. I started calling people. I made a spreadsheet of everybody I knew. And I would have coffees and lunches. I got these really cheap business cards from Vistaprint. I think for the first 2 months, every day I ran around to a different treatment center that I could find online, handed out my business card, told people what I was doing. And I started talking about what I was doing, and there's one statute called the Marchman Act. And it took me 14 months to get a call about a behavioral health case. So I took criminal cases. I co-counseled a couple of family law cases with a friend from law school. My very first case was a student athlete here in Florida who got himself in a bit of hot water with a female student. At the time I took a big fee and I was like, oh, wow, I'm the richest guy in Boca, right? But by the time I ran up there half a dozen times, I think I spent all the money on gas and hotels. So meanwhile, I saved the kid's scholarship, so everybody was happy, and it didn't go criminal. And somewhere along the ways, I had enough money to get a small office, which we ironically still have. I don't use it much because we're pretty much virtual. 11 months in, my dad passed away unexpectedly. So I had to scramble to pay for a funeral. 2 days after I buried him, I had a family member that fell off the wagon. So I was like, okay, what else could possibly go wrong here, right? I mean, so, I remember writing my very first marketing check for $1,250 and thinking, oh my God, I hope it doesn't bounce. Right. But meanwhile, I started putting out those videos, and the guy down south caught wind of what I was doing and went and registered the fictitious name to my website and said, you need to shut this down. So I went and registered the fictitious name to his website and said, bring it on. You want to step outside? Let's go. Show me what you got. And, ever since then, I've had a very adversarial relationship with him, although it seemed to calm down.
So what was he doing exactly?
Well, so here's the deal. I mean, he was doing a little bit of the work that we were doing, right? He also sued nursing homes. The guy up north was a family lawyer, and I didn't begrudge them. There's plenty of people that need help. But, if you're going to try to prevent me from putting food on the table for my family, then it becomes personal. And see, what happened was I started getting calls from people. They're like, we never heard of this law, the Marchman Act. When did that come on the books? Well, it'd been on the books since 1993, but these two guys weren't talking about it because they didn't want any other lawyers to know about it. They were making too much money. So they did their networking. People knew about them, right? But here I was blabbing about it all over social media, and the phone was ringing. Well, I was taking food off the table for them. They had a monopoly on it. And I'm like, listen, man, you don't have a monopoly on helping people.
No.
You don't. So, there it was. So second year I had to practice, 2017, I met my now wife. And for the next 7 years, it was just the two of us hustling and working our ass off and doing sales, the marketing, meeting with the clients, drafting pleadings, running to court. I mean, I was driving 25,000 miles a year, running to different courthouses all over the state of Florida. And, it was only been the last 2 years or 2.5 years, because we just had our 10-year anniversary, that we hired a bunch of staff. Or I wouldn't be able to sit here and have a conversation with you. We're now a team of 15 people. So, which is great. But of course, that brings its own challenges, right? Personalities and making sure people are doing their work and all this other fun stuff. So I feel very blessed. I've been able to take care of my mom, financially. We've been able to travel. We took our kids away. I've been able to save some money. So everything I lost, for the most part, I got back by working hard and investing it. And,
So the interest in mental health, that's a important part of what you do. Maybe explain a little bit in depth about why that's important to you and exactly what do you do then to help?
Well, I mean, I had so when I first started to do the work, Jeff, back in 2016, my focus, especially with the Marchman Act, which is a statute that's unique to Florida here, was really on alcohol and recreational drugs, right? The idea of mental illness didn't really play into it. But two things really changed that: COVID and the legalization of marijuana. And those two things really shifted our cases. So here in Florida, we have a statute called the Baker Act, which is a statute that allows the state to grab somebody when there's a mental health crisis. Every state has a version of the Baker Act. It's called Baker Act because it's named after somebody called Baker. Marchman Act's named after somebody who was called Marchman, right? And 2 days after I buried my father, I had a family member that was Baker Acted, and I was there when it went down. And I was like, wow, this is really scary shit, right? Yeah. During COVID, other lawyers started to call me because their clients were getting Baker Acted too, and nobody out there knew how to handle these cases. And I'm like, I'm a lawyer. I'm going to figure this out. And I started reading the statute. And I'm like, I can get these people out. And fast forward, I'm probably I probably file more cases against different state facilities all over the state to get people out. Somewhere between 200 and 250 cases every single year to get people out of the Baker Act. And I say this tongue in cheek, but while some of my other colleagues were sitting at home in their pajamas watching, reruns of Seinfeld, my wife and I buckled down. We launched a brand new website and a new SKU, and we decided we were going to help all these people getting sucked into Florida's broken, draconian mental health system. And as a result, I mean, I'm probably one of the state's leading experts now because it happened to me. And I've represented probably close to 1,000 families who've had issues with the Baker Act. So
well, I was going to ask you too on this. You talked earlier about the kind of the systemic problem of just incarcerating people that are struggling with addiction and substance abuse primarily. I look at my son, for example. I shared with you that he was actually in prison prior to his death from fentanyl. And what I struggled with was when he was released, there wasn't really a very good handoff. He was pretty much just sent out, a couple bags, and that was it. Knowing full well that he had substance abuse issues and challenges. It's one of the reasons why he was in prison in the first place. What's your thoughts on how we can rectify this problem? Like, what can we do to arm parents like me that aren't lawyers? I'm not, I was just a financial advisor dad in Iowa, and my son's in prison, and he gets out, and I really didn't know what to do. And it didn't take long for Seth to get back into his old habits. With the recidivism rates are really high, especially if you're going in for drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. So I think the thing that people don't realize, Jeff, is that there's two ways the state can take you. One is through the criminal justice system, and the other is through the mental health system, right? And the state has, both of those are in every state, that we have here in the country. And my experience is that the state is not very good at taking care of people, whether it's through the criminal system or the mental health system. They're just not, right? They shuffle them in, they shuffle them out. There's no regard to the fact these are actually human beings.
Right.
And, normally the objection is, well, we don't have the resources to take care of them, right? We just got to get them in, got to get him out because we got beds to fill. So that's number one. Number two, other than Florida, they're really, let me back up a second. I market, most of the people that we work with who are mums and dads, the bulk of them mums and dads are not in Florida. We get calls from all over the country, as far west as Hawaii. Had a call yesterday from Portland, Oregon. We've had a lot of clients from New York, New Jersey, that whole New England area. A couple of them have been international. And they call us because in the states that they live in, there's two things that are missing. Number one, really great treatment. And number two, a legal system that would empower the families to be able to make the decision for their loved one that their loved one cannot make. Because of what a behavioral health disease does, and it is a disease, is it basically kidnaps or hijacks the person's brain. So not only are they incapable of making the decision to save themselves, a lot of the time they're not even capable of admitting or realizing they have a problem. It's everybody else that has the problem. And so families are like, well, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Right? How can we help them? How can we make the decision they can't make? And I think one of the big passions of mine is getting out there and throwing as much information out there as I can, so that families who are in Oregon or in California or in Hawaii or in New York are like, hold on a second, there's this guy down in South Florida, he might have an answer for us, which is why most of the calls are coming from out of state, right? This thing is, I learned a lot by watching R. John Robbins, right? This is a powerful tool. I make 2 videos every day that go out there, right? Along with a podcast and now a live show. And I just finished up writing a book about the Marchman Act that's going to have, 9 chapters and interactive videos. We were just, before I got on the phone before I got on this with you, I was talking to my marketing people. That's going to launch. I'm going to do one on guardianship, which has been an incredibly powerful tool for us. Guardianship was traditionally used for elderly people. My brilliant wife said, hold on a second, we could use this for all these people that have severe mental health issues. And so, she pretty much wrote the book on how to use guardianship for behavioral health issues. But the point is that most families don't know there's a solution, right? And if you don't know there's a solution, how do you solve the problem, right? And of course, there's also been this huge stigma attached to mental health, right?
Oh yeah, that's
huge
one thing
stigma.
we're trying to.
And also drug use. Well, why doesn't he stop using? Why doesn't she stop using? Well, don't you think if he could or she could, they would? Why are they in denial, right? And so you get this. There's such a strong psychological component to this. There is. There's no one size fits all. And I think that when families call us, because by the time they get to us, this has been going on for years and years and years, there's sometimes this internal struggle going on about whose fault it is. Yeah,
it's not too late, but it's so far progressed.
Whose fault is it? Mom's fault? It's mom's fault because her father was an alcoholic and had schizophrenia.
Yeah.
No, it's dad's fault. His dad had bipolar, and, and multiple personalities. So it's his fault. Hold on a second. I agree. There's probably a genetic component, but it's no one's fault. Because if we were talking about cancer, would we be blaming somebody else's grandparents?
Right.
It's a disease, and it's no one's fault, right? And so part of what we do is we're like, hold on a second. This is a no judgment zone. We're not looking to. This is not about whose fault it is. First of all, it's no one's fault.
Right.
But second of all, you have a problem. Let's work on the solution. Let's bring everybody together, and let's come up with a game plan so that you can end the chaos and nightmare.
I think part of the insanity, I hate to use that term in a mental health like conversation, but part of the insanity of the whole thing is the way the system is set up. And what I mean by that is there's an assumption that if somebody's having a difficult lived experience, let's say they're poor relationship with alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, the implication is that they're broken, and that in being broken, we have to have some type of diagnosis. So like depression, anxiety, or whatever these terms are that is so conveniently thrown around like Skittles, it seems today. And with that diagnosis now, since we've named it, now we have the ability to tame it. And the taming becomes, prescription drugs. And that's the system that I threw my son and my wife into, that was given Adderall. And then when Prudence died, she had 12 prescription bottles next to her. So one of the areas that I really, for me to add value to this system, wasn't going to come in and fix the treatment side, because there's too much money behind it. I'm a dad in Iowa. I'm not a healthcare executive. I don't have those connections. However, what I can do is focus further upstream. And that's where what we're doing at Brighton, and where a lot of the conversation I'm having with people in this space is there an opportunity for us that we're missing, where instead of what we think we're throwing water on a fire, and that's treatment, care providing, it's really just gasoline, and we're exacerbating the problem, just in the 5 to 10 year rolling averages of all types of issues with the human experience, anxiety, depression, overdose, alcoholism, other than maybe overdose. Most of them have gotten progressively worse in the last 5 to 10 years. At the same time, we have more labels, more diagnosis, or more treatment. So you made a comment, and you were exactly right. We don't need more treatment. We need better treatment. I heard you say that we need better treatment. A lot of people say, well, we just need more treatment. We need more prescriptions. We need more diagnosis. And I'm like, I don't think we need more. I think we need better. And I think we need to get further upstream and figure out why my son Seth was struggling in the first place, and go prior to his challenges. And as Dr. Gabor Mate says, that most addictions stem from childhood trauma. I don't necessarily believe that, because I was an alcoholic and a gambler for many years, and I didn't have any childhood trauma. So I'm not sure, if that can be a blanket statement made to everybody's case. My addictions came from, I was bored, small town Iowa, nothing to do. So we started drinking beer. I wasn't drinking because I was abused as a child, or I lost my marriage, or I drank because we sat around twiddling our thumbs going, what are we going to do? We just got our licenses and drove around country roads and tipped over cars and chased girls. That was my joke back then. And so, my road to alcoholism, which ended up being 35 years of a full-blown alcoholic, didn't come from any traumatic event in my life, unless it's something I've regressed and I don't remember it. But I just think we have an opportunity as a society to really put our attention into being further upstream, focus on prevention, coping mechanisms, skill sets you can learn when the inevitable bad phone call comes, like death or a cancer diagnosis or something comes up. We're always, you and I are, we're always minutes away from a call. My phone could ring right now and I could get a horrific message. What's your plan? Do you have a plan? And most people don't. Most people, the system's all reactive. It's all acute. It's all symptom based. And I'm like, I did financial planning, and we didn't wait till retirement to plan. We didn't wait till you're out of money to get a car to go plan. You did it when you did sign up for your 401k and got your match. Well, we don't do that with mental health. The whole system is predicated, and I'm trying to be that. And I know you agree as well, trying to get more people to be more focused on preventing fires from starting versus spending all this time and money putting them out, which certainly statistics aren't showing is working.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was an article I actually wrote a video on this morning. I guess, RFK Jr. is working with, I guess there's also, we have a national drug czar on there. What they're looking to do is they're looking to make behavioral health more readily accessible. I think they're going to focus on the homeless people, which is fine. I think one of the issues with the system is that quality treatment is not available to everybody. So
Correct.
look, I deal with people who have financial resources or they have health insurance. I also get calls from people who don't have those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they say, well, what can I do? If we can afford to hire you, what's the treatment option? And I say, well, we can send them to, the county facility. So every county in Florida has at least one, if not two, sort of behavioral health type facilities. The problem is they're overwhelmed, right? Try getting a bed. And it's not that they don't care, these folks. I think that they deeply do, but they're so under-resourced. So, right, they're trying to get people in and get them out and get them in and get them out, right? And it really, statistically speaking, and we found from our own experience, it takes a year for someone to recover and to develop the skill set necessary to maintain recovery for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
I was just at a conference I spoke at a couple of weeks ago, and Dr. Robert Sanchez, who's a colleague and a good friend, said if you can keep somebody in recovery for a year, 70% chance they stay in recovery for the rest of their life. If you can keep in recovery for 5 years, 83% they stay recovered for the rest of their life. So the first year is the most important year. That's where the bulk of the recovery is going to take place. They make a little bit of a gain from years 1 to 5, but it's that first year, that first 3-6 months, followed by the continuum of care, that really is the game changer. Well, if that's not available to everybody, then how do we expect people to recover? And so, and there's been a lot of talk, the government's going to throw money at a problem, and it sounds nice, but quite frankly, based on what we're reading in the news, anytime the government is throwing money at a problem, there's going to be some arsehole out there who thinks it's a good excuse to get rich.
Yeah.
And that's what bothers me, because they throw the money out there and they're not watching to see who's taking it. They're just not. And it just, you invite crooks to come in.
Another statistic that is on the other side of what you just quoted, because you're right about recovery and all that, is the age of first use in the United States is 14 years old. And half of all lifetime mental illness begins at 14. So we know this going into this fight. We know that the age of first use of drugs and alcohol, now with vaping and things like that, you throw that in, is 14. And half of all lifetime illness starts at 14. You go a couple years down the road, and if you can make it to 18 and not have an addiction problem, okay, smoking, drinking, vaping, whatever, I think you have like a 72% chance of never having an addiction problem the rest of your life. Now, that to me fixes the downstream problem, fixes the overburden, the overwork, the not, you can't get a therapist booked for 6 months. I mean, the reason we have that problem is because upstream, the river is gaining more momentum. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. By the time it gets downstream, it's overwhelming the banks. So I'm looking at the statistic, 14 and 18. Why don't we bet the farm right there, 14 to 18? And I throw that out as an open-ended question because I don't know why we don't. I've not, and our app, when we first built it, was focused on that age bracket. We were focused on what I would consider early Gen Z. So Gen Z is 14 to 26, I think now. And it's frustrating to get into schools and hear them not prioritize this. And I'm like showing them the studies. It's like, if you want to prevent some of these problems we're having with people not getting treatment, one way to do this is the statistics are telling exactly the age range where we should be focusing right now. The old saying, where your attention goes, your energy flows. Our attention isn't with 14 and 18-year-olds. Right now, we're all preoccupied trying to save people, which is fine. But I'm just trying to think of why, and it's money driven too. Obviously, there's a ton of money in treatment, like you said. There's a ton of money in diagnosis and treatment, and pharmaceutical companies make so much money. It's unforgivable how much money they make on prescribing drugs to people. They want clients for life. There's no incentive for them to get people off these meds. They don't teach you to deprescribe. They just tell you what to take, how many, and what happens if you don't, which is always bad. It's always bad, So you end up keeping drugs in your system forever. I'm just curious, and this is like one of my passions at 60 years old now is trying to bring this conversation to more people that are in this space. What prevents us from moving further upstream? You know, what is the real reason why we don't? It seems to me common sense that if we as a country and as a society and as humanity really focused on our youth, 14 to 18, the evidence shows how much problems we could prevent further down the road. I don't know. I mean, it just seems to me it's.
I mean, I don't think there's any one answer. I mean, I think there's trauma. I mean, doesn't have to be sexual trauma. It could be physical trauma. You know, I see
the prefrontal cortex isn't formed, so that's hard when you're trying to work with young adults that can't rationalize and reason, and they don't understand addiction necessarily. Social media, Mark, has been a really bad addition. TikTok, Instagram. I mean, adults are addicted to that stuff now, but it's like kids sitting there, you know, imagine if you and I had TikTok at 15. You know, if I'm feeling down, I'll jump on TikTok. I'm going to feel a lot worse. I'm not going to feel better. You know, I could go out and shoot baskets with my brothers for an hour and feel really good. But now kids go to the phone and all they end up doing is feeling worse.
Yeah, I mean, I was a kid growing up in England. I mean, I was obsessed with playing soccer. That's all I wanted to do was play soccer. And you're right. Yep. The social media, I mean, you've got, you know, we see a lot of kids with eating disorders, and most of them are women, right? Because this sort of image of the perfect body, most of which is now created by AI as well. And
right.
I was reading an article the other day about what they call it bigorexia, right? Guys who, you know, they're never big enough, right? And so they're you know, you got kids 16, 17 of 8 who are injecting testosterone, and God only knows what.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else?
Absolutely.
Well, you know, when you do that to a young kid and they suddenly stop, then they suffer from depression. So, and also, you know, I can't tell you how many cases I see where at some early age, a doctor said to the parents, "Oh, let's put him on a medication, you know, Adderall, Ritalin, you know, because the kid couldn't concentrate at school." When I was at school,
Mark, I did it with Seth.
When I was at school, you know what happened?
I did it with my son.
I got wrapped in the knuckles. And I'm not advocating. Now, my parents sent me to an all boys private school, which I hated. And I'm not advocating that we hit kids. I'm just saying that not everything needs a pill thrown at it. Right. You watch the TV at night. You know, there's a pill for everything. It's just unbelievable. You know, you can't sit still. Oh, you need a pill for that. My feet are tingling. You need a pill for that.
The study I saw, Mark, was I think 60% of all advertisements on TV in the United States are pharmaceutical based. And I think New Zealand and the United States are the only countries that allow pharmaceutical ads on TV. I think it's very small. There's only a few countries that allow it. So, but then look at the rates of depression, anxiety in our youth. You know, which country has the largest percentage of kind of messed up kids right now? It's the United States. And again, you just look at our accessibility kids have to social media and how, you know, it used to be Adderall was actually prescribed to children more. Now it's actually adults take Adderall more. But where are kids getting their Adderall from? From the medicine cabinet from the mom and dad that are on Adderall.
Well, they can be, but you know, my brother is a doctor. He works in the hospital. He developed a real passion for critical care medicine because before my father died, he was in and out of hospital for many years. And so my brother decided he wanted to be a hospitalist. But my brother said to me, he said, "You know the hardest part of medical school?" I said, "What?" He said, "Learning all the medications, remembering all the different medications they teach you. You can't believe it. There's so many different medications. You can't remember them all."
No.
You know, I've got a brother-in-law who's in private practice. He's a doctor. And I used to go whenever I wanted to see him. Every time I went to see him, there was another pretty rep walking in, selling this medication, medication, right?
Yeah.
Right. Promote my medication. You know, I mean, and look, we have made I got a family of doctors, 4 on my wife's side, 2 on mine. Okay. I just had my arm fixed by an orthopedist. So I'm not poo-pooing the medical profession.
Sure.
But between the pills and this legalized weed, we have created an entire generation of people that are having mental health crises that shouldn't be having mental health crises.
Right.
And it's a problem.
No,
I think it's the number one crisis we're going to face as a country. I really do.
I do too. And you know, it's I'll stay non-political, but you even watch some of the actions of our top politicians, and they just have embody all the signs of a mental illness. I mean, just, you know, and it's either side of the fence. It isn't just one side or the other. Well, let me do this. This has been a quick quick conversation. I knew it would be. How do people learn more about you, or what? How can they access your podcast, or like if you have a book or anything that you're promoting? What are some ways people? We'll have everything on the links. My editors will put that on there, but just verbally, what are some ways people can reach out to you on LinkedIn or Facebook? Or
So probably the best way to find us is our main website, which is mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. That's mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. Or if they just Google my name, just type in attorney Mark Astor. I've got 1,000 videos on YouTube, and I add to them every day. And you should be able to find, I think if you just do a search of me, you'll find the YouTube channel. I mean, it's just everywhere. Like I said, I'm a big believer in giving value to people, even if they never call me. I don't care.
Right.
I'm here to provide you with the information that you need, right? And here's the other thing, it used to be people would go to Google to do research. Now they go to ChatGPT, right?
Right.
And it's giving them all the wrong information. And listen, there are lawyers using ChatGPT. You know what ChatGPT does when it doesn't know the answer? It makes it up.
Yeah.
It makes it up. There are lawyers now submitting case law to judges that doesn't exist. There's a couple of lawyers in hot water right now with a judge or two for presenting memos to a judge with a case that doesn't exist, right? And we've had issues with AI, coaching kids about how to commit suicide. And now people are going to ChatGPT and they're asking for legal advice, and they're calling our office. Oh, you don't need to do this. You don't need to do that. Well, how many cases has ChatGPT actually handled? Because when you've handled a couple thousand of them, then ChatGPT can tell me how to do my job, right? But this is the problem, question. Right? So I give this stuff away for free. You want the real information? You can have it. Go to YouTube, and it's there for free. You don't have to go to ChatGPT. I'm giving it to you for free. And when I put out a video, I tell families, if there's an issue going on in your family and I didn't make a video, post a comment. I'll make you a video for free, so you can get the information you need based on real cases and real experience, not this other garbage that's out there. And if at that point you decide you want to call my office, you could even speak to the office for free. So I try to give as much information and as much value as I can for free. So
that's great because there's a lot of junk out there that isn't free.
Yep. And the Marchman book should be out, I suppose, in the next couple of weeks. We're building that out. And we're going to do one on the guardianship process too, how we use guardianship for behavioral health issues. And then I suspect we'll do one for Baker Act, and it'll all be downloadable. There'll be videos where I'm talking to you, and there's going to be all different things that are attached to it. You can download workbooks. I mean, we put a lot of time, energy, and money into this thing so people can really get the information they need and get some help, and they don't have to call me to get it. So,
well, I appreciate all you're doing, because I can see why Steve wanted us to talk initially a few months back. It's all hands on deck right now in regards to
takes a village
flourishing. It is, and you've got a certain niche, your specialty in. We're building an AI powered planning app that we can take AI you made a couple observations that are correct. However, there's also a ton of opportunities in regards to AI, but there's also a ton of challenges, and no different than a human therapist. They can be wrong too, and they can lie too. We have to look at what else we're comparing our other options to. And with the way humans now is just so, I tried to get a therapy appointment and it was so booked, I ultimately just didn't go. And that's not an option either. I mean, we should be able, if someone is taking 6 months or 6 years to finally go see a therapist, and you have that window. Sometimes it's seconds, sometimes it's minutes where they're willing, they're vulnerable to go, and to get to the website and say, "Oh, I'm 4 months out." It's done. You missed that window. You're not going to get that person back probably. There's a lot of people that never get into therapy and they really want to go. So I think with every challenge, like AI, I think there's a lot of opportunities, but it certainly needs to get. And one thing too, I just wanted to throw out there that I think I learned a lot, because I wasn't an AI guy before we started our app, Mark, was it's really only as good as it's trained too, initially. Obviously it can, once it becomes sentient and we have singularity, it'll be teaching itself, but we're not there yet. I'm being sarcastic because that's really the doom and gloom about AI, is that ultimately it'll just be training itself. But AI, in a way, and the metaphor I use is a pit bull. If you have two dogs, one's trained really well and the other's abused and not trained, they're both pit bulls, but they're different. And I kind of look at AI that way too. It's like, if AI is trained correctly and has guardrails and you do the best that you can to prevent it from hallucination, which is what you described eloquently when you said it can lie, then that's really, I think at this point, the best we can do. My biggest fear is AI learns to train itself. It could train to blackmail people. It could train to be deceptive. Those are things that I think are very scary when you're looking at AI way down the road, and maybe not way down the road. The way the velocity is of technology, we're doing in a week that used to take 10 years, And so in the next year, think how different AI is going to be than it is today. That's pretty scary, but it's also opportunistic as well,
Yeah, it's my uncle, my mom's youngest brother, who's since passed, was a computer guy. He didn't live long enough to see AI, but he used to tell me that a computer is a clever idiot, right? What he meant was it's only as smart as the training that we give it. It's only as smart as the software that we give it.
Right.
And I think that,
it is. And,
I think, what was the movie Terminator? I think when it becomes self-aware, that's when the problem can happen.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that think we're not real far off.
Probably not.
I think someone said that there was like an inter-office leak of a memo, like with Anthropic or something. And like 20% of the engineers there predicted AI to be able to train itself eventually. It's not a encouraging number to think that people building it are worried about it cannibalizing itself,
Yeah.
All right, man, covered a lot.
It sees us as a threat and decides to eliminate us if we don't do it ourselves.
Yeah, I know. Then we got problems. Well, listen, man, it was good seeing you again. I really appreciate what you do. And once we get your contact information, we'll put it on the site here, and we'll support you best we can, man.
Thank you.